Chapter 5. Group Date Disaster. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, painting Seoul's Yeouido Park with delicate pink hues that drifted lazily in the spring breeze. It was the perfect setting for what John had dubbed Operation Group Harmony, a casual picnic gathering, where all 7C7 members and their respective interests could meet in a relaxed setting. At least, that had been the plan. "This is a terrible idea," Silas muttered, adjusting the portable speaker he had spent 3 hours programming with the ambient playlist. Too many variables. Too many potential disasters. Unfazed by his bandmates' pessimism, John continued arranging an elaborate spread of homemade dishes across several picnic blankets. He had been up since dawn preparing ssambap, with 3 different protein options, perfectly seasoned namul, and an array of banchan that would impress any food critic, which was precisely the point. "It's going to be fine," John assured him, positioning the last dish. "Everyone's been briefed on appropriate topics. Manager Kando approved the location for security. The weather is perfect." "You've jinxed us now," Silas warned darkly. Nearby, Julian was bouncing on his toes, unable to contain his excitement as he arranged what appeared to be team-building equipment, colored flags, beanbags, and mysterious index cards with instructions. "Did you prepare group activities?" Roman asked, adjusting his glasses as he surveyed Julian's collection with growing concern. "Of course." Julian beamed. "Nothing brings people together like team challenges. I have a planned sequence: icebreakers, trust exercises, and a grand finale treasure hunt." Roman and Silas exchanged alarmed glances. "People generally prefer to chat during social gatherings," Roman suggested. "Perhaps we should focus on facilitating interaction rather than structured activities." Julian's smile remained bright. "Don't worry. These are just options. Read the room. Though everyone loves a good 3-legged race." Vic arrived next, arms laden with an improbable quantity of flowers. Not bouquets, but individual blooms of different varieties, each wrapped carefully in tissue paper. He began arranging them in a pattern that made sense only to him, occasionally murmuring to himself. "What's with the botanical explosion?" Silas asked, gesturing toward Vic's growing flower arrangement. "Each bloom carries its dialogue," Vic explained cryptically. "When words fail, petals speak." "He's planning to communicate with Sarah exclusively through flower metaphors," Roman translated, having become somewhat fluent in Vic's abstract speech patterns. "Each flower represents a specific sentiment." "That's..." Silas searched for a diplomatic response. "Uniquely Vic." Jake was the last member to arrive. He set up a camera on a tripod at what he believed was a discreet distance from the picnic area. "Please tell me you're not planning to film this social experiment," John called over. Jake shrugged unapologetically. "For personal study only." "You do realize how strange that sounds?" Silas pointed out. "Says the man who brought 3 different Bluetooth speakers to ensure wide sound distribution across the picnic area," Jake countered. Before the friendly bickering could escalate, Roman checked his watch. "The guests should start arriving at any minute. Remember, everyone, this is a normal, casual setting, just friends enjoying a picnic together." The 6 present members nodded in agreement, though each had a distinctly different interpretation of normal social behavior. Meyer was the first to arrive, her casual outfit belying the deliberate thought she had put into appearing effortlessly stylish. Her eyes immediately narrowed at the sight of Silas's speaker setup. "Planning to drown out conversation with background music?" she asked, greeting. Silas straightened. "Planning to appreciate curated ambient soundscapes that enhance rather than distract." Meyer pulled a small portable speaker from her bag. "I brought my playlist, underground artists you've probably never heard of." "Of course you did," Silas muttered, though the corners of his mouth twitched with what might have been amusement. Saul arrived next, her expression as neutral as always. She approached John's food display with a deliberate assessment, as if about to conduct a formal review. "Impressive presentation," she noted, bending slightly to inhale the aroma of a dish. "Traditional techniques with modern compositional elements." John beamed at the observation. "I incorporated seasonal greens from the market this morning. The perilla leaves are particularly—" "The true test is in the tasting," Saul interrupted, though not unkindly. "Visual appeal is meaningless without corresponding flavor complexity." "Of course," John agreed, though his smile dimmed slightly at her clinical approach. The sound of upbeat music and laughter announced Hope's arrival. She stormed into the picnic area wearing brightly colored athletic wear, her purple hair now streaked with teal. Upon spotting Julian, she immediately broke into an impromptu dance, which he joined without hesitation. "I brought bubble wands for everyone," Hope announced, pulling an improbable number of them from her backpack. "And temporary tattoos. And a portable karaoke machine." Julian's eyes widened with delight. "I brought team-building games." "Perfect." Hope clapped her hands. "We can combine them into an epic picnic Olympics." The other members tried to mask their panic at this prospect. As Ellie approached, a more subdued entrance followed. She carried a small notebook, writing in it even as she walked. Her focus was so complete that she nearly collided with Roman, who stepped forward to greet her. "Documenting observations?" Roman inquired politely. Ellie looked up, slightly startled. "Cataloging the cherry blossom varieties. This section of the park has 3 distinct cultivars with different petal structures. It's fascinating." Roman's face lit up. "I've been reading about the historical significance of cherry blossom viewing in East Asian cultural contexts. Did you know that the transient nature of the blossoms made them a powerful metaphor in 17th century poetry?" "I did not," Ellie replied, her attention fully captured. "Please elaborate." As they drifted off into what promised to be a lengthy academic discussion, Sarah made her entrance. Unlike the casual attire of the other guests, she wore an elegant day dress that looked effortless and carefully chosen. Her model's height and grace made her instantly noticeable, though her expression was subdued as she scanned the gathering. Vic had been arranging his flowers and immediately straightened them when she arrived. He selected a single pale pink bloom from his collection and approached her. "Cherry blossoms fall, unique in their sameness," he said, reading and offering her the flower. "You stand distinct, the magnolia among sakura." Rather than appearing confused by this cryptic statement, Sarah accepted the bloom with a small smile. "The magnolia blooms before leaves appear, vulnerable but bold." Vic's eyes widened slightly at her kind response. "You speak the language of petals." "I'm learning the dialect," Sarah replied, twirling the flower softly. Their exchange was interrupted by Tina's arrival, who looked slightly uncomfortable at the gathering. She wore simple dance practice clothes that suggested she had come directly from the studio, her hair still damp from a hasty shower. Jake immediately abandoned his camera to greet her, his confident movements suddenly awkward. "Thank you for coming," he said formally. "I wasn't sure if you would." "Your invitation was very persistent," Tina replied, though without rancor. 7 text messages and a handwritten note delivered to my studio. Jake had the grace to look embarrassed. "Too much?" "Determined," Tina corrected, the ghost of a smile flickering across her face. "I admire commitment to a goal, even if the approach needs refinement." The gathering was almost complete when a commotion at the park entrance caught everyone's attention. James hurried toward them, followed by his identical twin, Evan, and the brightly dressed Muse, whose animated gestures suggested she was in the middle of an enthusiastic story. "Sorry we're late." James called. Evan's car had a flat tire, and then Muse insisted on stopping to rescue a family of ducks crossing the road, and then... I didn't insist on anything, Muse interrupted, her eyes sparkling with amusement. The mama duck needed traffic direction, and as a responsible citizen, I was merely... She stood in the middle of the road conducting traffic like an orchestra, Evan explained fondly, complete with dramatic flourishes for each car. It worked, didn't it? Muse defended. All ducklings safely delivered to their destination. Their animated three-way conversation halted abruptly as they reached the picnic area, suddenly aware of everyone watching them with varying degrees of confusion. Everyone, this is Muse and, Evan, James introduced awkwardly. Muse, Evan, this is, everyone. The elusive twin. Julian exclaimed, bounding over. And the kindergarten teacher. Double welcome. Twins? Meyer raised eyebrows at Silas. You didn't mention one of your members had an identical twin. It doesn't usually come up in music production discussions, Silas replied dryly. John clapped as introductions were made, and everyone settled onto the picnic blankets. Let's eat while the food is at its optimal temperature and texture. This innocent suggestion sparked the first of many conflicts that would define the rest of the afternoon. Meyer immediately reached for her speaker, intending to provide musical accompaniment to the meal. Silas intercepted, pointing to his own carefully positioned audio system. My playlist is specifically calibrated for open-air dining, he insisted. The bass levels are adjusted to compensate for outdoor acoustics. My playlist features independent artists who need exposure, Meyer countered, reaching for the volume control. Not AI-generated, mood music. Mine is a carefully constructed progression designed to facilitate digestion and conversation. Mine is an open cultural expression. As they bickered, both failed to notice Julian sneaking to the speakers and connecting his device, from which children's party music suddenly blasted at a startling volume. Picnic dance time, Julian announced, pulling Hope to her feet. Together, they demonstrated what appeared to be a choreographed routine, explicitly created for outdoor dining, complete with napkin waving and sandwich-themed movements. Roman flinched at the volume, turning apologetically to Ellie. Perhaps we could continue our discussion of botanical classification systems over there? He gestured toward a slightly more distant cherry tree. Ellie nodded gratefully, and they retreated with plates of food to establish their academic sanctuary. Meanwhile, John presented Saul with a carefully arranged plate that showcased the progression of flavors in his dishes. I recommend beginning with the mild radish kimchi to prepare the palate, then proceeding to. I prefer to assess dishes individually without predetermined bias, Saul interrupted, selecting a piece of spinach na-mool that was not part of John's suggested sequence. John's face fell slightly, but he quickly recovered. Of course. Each diner's journey is personal. As Saul took her first bite, John watched her expression with the intensity of a scientist monitoring a critical experiment. Her face remained perfectly neutral as she chewed methodically. Well, John finally asked, unable to bear the suspense any longer. The sesame oil to soy ratio is interesting, Saul commented, which John knew from their previous interactions was neither praise nor criticism, but merely observation. Before he could request elaboration, a commotion erupted from the edge of their picnic site. A line of industrious ants had discovered John's culinary masterpieces and mounted a coordinated invasion of the Banshan. When Jake noticed and raised the alarm, their advance guard had already reached the kimchi. Ants. Ants on the food, he called, pointing dramatically. Chaos ensued. Julian and Hope immediately turned the situation into a game, creating ant barriers with napkins, while providing sports announcer commentary on the insects' tactical maneuvers. Silas argued for relocating the picnic, while Meyer insisted they needed to coexist with nature. James lifted Muse onto a bench when she claimed a particular ant was looking at her maliciously, while Evan calmly began moving dishes to higher ground. John stood frozen in horror, as his meticulously prepared feast became an ant highway. "I marinated the beef for 15 hours, he whispered to no one in particular. In the confusion, Roman attempted to help by retrimming an expensive bottle of wine he had brought as a contribution, hoping to salvage the meal with proper libations. As he hurried back toward the group, he overlooked a frisbee thrown by a nearby family. The collision was brief but catastrophic. The bottle slipped from his grasp, shattering into small pieces on a decorative rock and sending crimson splashes across the picnic blanket. "That was a 1982 Bordeaux," Roman murmured, his voice hollow with disbelief, to the stunned silence that followed. Ellie patted his arm sympathetically. "The transience of material pleasures reminds us of our impermanent nature, much like the cherry blossoms themselves." Roman blinked at her, then smiled weakly. "That's quite comforting." Meanwhile, Vic had established what appeared to be a flower-based communication center with Sarah. Each time she asked him a question, he would respond by selecting a specific bloom from his collection and presenting it with a cryptic statement. "What do you do when you're not performing?" Sarah inquired. Vic handed her a blue iris. "Water seeks its reflection, ever-changing yet constant." "He means he likes photography, particularly landscapes with water features," Jake translated as he passed by, temporarily abandoning his attempts to save the picnic to adjust his camera angle. Sarah twirled the iris thoughtfully. "I find myself drawn to natural imagery in my work as well. There's an honesty in organic forms that artificial structures often lack." Vic's eyes widened slightly, clearly surprised and pleased by her response. He selected another flower, a small yellow blossom, and offered it carefully. Sunshine captured in delicate vessels, resilient despite apparent fragility. Sarah accepted it with a small smile. "Like memories preserved in photographs?" Vic nodded, a rare smile transforming his serious expression. Their moment of union was abruptly interrupted when Julian bent over, Hope at his side, carrying an alarming number of colored flags. "Team game time," Julian announced. "We're dividing into groups for the ultimate picnic challenge." "The what now?" James asked, looking up from where he was frantically trying to brush ants off the last salvageable plates of food. "Hope and I combined our activities into the greatest outdoor competition ever created," Julian proclaimed proudly. "Part obstacle course, part treasure. E-hunt, part dance battle. With bubbles," Hope added enthusiastically. "And points for stylistic interpretation." The rest of the group exchanged looks, ranging from horror to resignation. "Perhaps we could simply sit and talk," Roman suggested desperately. "Interpersonal communication is the foundation of relationship building, after all." "That's exactly what the three-legged trust walk is for," Hope exclaimed, producing lengths of colorful fabric. "Communication through coordinated movement." 30 minutes of well-meaning chaos ensued as Julian and Hope attempted to gather their hesitant friends into participation. Jake silently filmed the entire mess, occasionally glancing at Tina, who watched with a mix of amusement and disbelief. "Is this what idle life is always like?" she asked, catching his eye. "Only on our days off," Jake replied seriously, which startled a genuine laugh from her. As the afternoon progressed, the picnic gradually split into smaller, more manageable groups. Roman and Ellie retreated to a cherry tree, where they developed a collaborative classification system for the park's flora using their notebooks. Silas and Meyer reached an unlikely compromise by taking turns playing songs from their respective playlists, their argument evolving into an enthusiastic discussion of production techniques. John had salvaged what food he could, and was now sitting at a cautious distance from Saul, trying not to watch too obviously, as she tasted each dish with measured pauses. Occasionally, she would make a brief note in a small notebook, which both terrified and intrigued him. "Is this an official review?" he finally asked. "Personal observations," Saul replied. After hesitating, she added, "Your technique with the sesame marinade is noteworthy." John brightened considerably. "It's a family recipe. My grandmother taught me to toast the sesame seeds until they're golden, then—" "The execution is notable," Saul interrupted, though not unkindly. "Though I might suggest a more adventurous heat application in future iterations." John nodded eagerly, mentally cataloging her feedback for his next cooking attempt. At the far edge of the picnic area, the most complicated social dynamic unfolded as James attempted to navigate his twin and muse. The kindergarten teacher seemed equally comfortable talking to either brother, which bothered James more than if she had preferred Evan. "So, you're seriously telling me you can always tell them apart?" Meyer asked Muse as the group briefly reconvened for dessert, store-bought after the ant incident. Muse nodded confidently. "Always. They're completely different people who happen to share the same face." "But they're identical," Hope pointed out, studying the twins with narrowed eyes. "Even their eyebrows are the same." "It's not about physical features," Muse explained. "It's about energy. Evan has this calm, steady presence, like a quiet mountain lake. James is more like a sparkler. All brightness and carefully directed energy." James was not sure whether to be flattered or offended by the comparison to a sparkler. "I can be calm," he protested. Evan and Muse snorted in unison, then looked at each other in surprise before dissolving into laughter. "What's so funny?" James demanded. "You've never been calm a day," Evan said fondly. "Even as a baby, you were constantly in motion. Remember when he tried to be calm, teacher Evan?" Muse added, her eyes shining with amusement. "The children thought he was sick because he spoke so slowly and deliberately." "That was method acting," James defended, though he could not help smiling at the memory. "You taught kindergarten?" Hope asked, clearly delighted by this revelation. "He substituted for me once," Evan explained. "It was an experience. For everyone involved," Muse added. "Especially when he tried to lead the penguin dance." As the twins and Muse recounted the kindergarten adventure to an increasingly amused audience, James watched Muse's animated expressions and expressive hands as she told the story. Something was captivating about her lack of self-consciousness, which differed from the carefully managed personas he encountered in the entertainment industry. It suddenly struck him that he was having a wonderful time, sharing embarrassing stories with his friends. The realization was both uncomfortable and exhilarating. As the afternoon light softened toward evening, the group began packing up. A strange alchemy occurred despite the ants, the broken wine bottle, and Julian's overzealous team-building exercises. Bonds had formed, however tentative, and banters had evolved beyond the initial awkwardness. "So," John asked as they gathered their belongings, "on a scale of complete disaster to moderate success, how would we rate Operation Group Harmony?" 47% successful, Silas assessed precisely. "With notable areas for improvement in ant prevention and activity coordination." "I thought it was wonderful," Julian declared. "Though next time we should add water balloons to the relay race." "There will be no next time," Roman stated firmly. "At least not with relay races," Ellie amended, earning a grateful look from Roman. As they finished packing, Manager Kando's van pulled up at the park entrance on schedule. The 7C7 members exchanged glances, suddenly aware of their return to their idle reality after this brief excursion into normalcy. "Thank you all for coming," John formally told their guests. "It was educational." "That's one word for it," Meyer commented, though the hint of a smile softened her usual edge. Goodbyes were exchanged with varying degrees of awkwardness. Vic presented Sarah with a carefully wrapped collection of the day's flowers. Jake convinced Tina to let him walk her to the subway station. Silas and Meyer argued whether their playlist collaboration constituted a creative partnership or a mutual compromise. John extracted a promise from Saul to provide written feedback on his dishes. Julian and Hope exchanged energetic high fives that evolved into an impromptu dance routine. James lingered as Muse prepared to leave with Evan, who had driven her to the picnic. "So," James began awkwardly, "what did you think about meeting everyone?" "It was a remarkable discovery. Your friends are exactly what I imagined idol group members to be, yet they are also entirely different." "What does that mean?" James asked, holding down curiosity. "It means they're trying so hard to be normal that they've circled back to extraordinary," Muse laughed. "It's endearing. Like watching highly specialized animals attempt to blend into an unfamiliar habitat." "That's a unique perspective," James said, unsure whether to be offended on behalf of his members. "It's a compliment," Muse assured him. "Sincere effort is always appealing, even when the execution is hilariously misguided." Before James could respond, Evan said they needed to leave to avoid evening traffic. Muse waved goodbye, her sunshine smile lingering in James's mind long after she had gone. As the C7 members piled into Manager Kando's van, a strange silence fell. "Well," Jake finally said, reviewing footage on his camera, "that was an enlightening experience," Roman delivered diplomatically. "A chaotic mess," Silas corrected. "The best day ever," Julian asserted. "All of the above," John concluded with a tired smile. As the van drove away from the park, James looked out the window at the cherry blossoms drifting in the evening breeze. Despite the disaster, or perhaps because of it, the carefully maintained boundary between C7 and the outside world had been breached, even if only slightly, and he was unsure if it could ever be fully repaired. Nor was he sure that he wanted it to be.